Good morning, friends. How are you today? It's Heather at Bush Poppy Farm. It is a beautiful, beautiful, feels like fall day. And so we're going to be doing some farm and garden chores today. So, as I said, it's a beautiful day. It is 59 degrees Fahrenheit and breezy, and we have fog, which is lovely. So it feels amazing out here. It's going to be cool for the next 2 days, very cool. And in fact, the northern parts of our state might get some rain because there's a big system up in the Oregon, Washington area, and it's actually dipping down, which is very unusual for August for us. They said it's not going to be much rain and we won't get any here, but it's still exciting. So today, I came out this morning. We're going to do a little bit of hand hoeing just to get stuff out of the beds, the growing beds. I'm not growing anything specific right now other than the mums. Everything else is going to need to come out soon. But I want to keep the weeds from encroaching so that we have a easier time flipping the beds in a month when we have to go from the end of summer to spring. So basically, I'm going to be using my two favorite tools, which I don't get to use on this property very often. I have a stirrup hoe and a collinear hoe. I'll show you those in a minute. Mostly the stuff on this property has been super deep-rooted things, with big tap roots that are a foot or more deep, and hoes don't tend to battle those very well. They're more for, shorter roots systems, things that are easier to pull out. So, but some of the stuff that are in these beds, I think I can get with the hose. But I'll have to come back out here next week with the hedge trimmer attachment on my battery operated machine and get all of the thistles and stuff. Those have stems on them that are usually up to an inch in diameter, and they go down very deep. And so I can't even get them out of the ground. Basically, all I can do is manage to cut them off at the base. But those definitely are super terrible weeds. So I want to get those gone as well. Next week, unfortunately, we're having another heat wave, so it will be really hot to be out here working. But I think we are starting to finally head, although sometimes September and October are our hottest months. So we'll see how it goes. But before Dylan goes back to school, I am looking forward to having him out here to help me build those couple of raised beds. And so I'm hoping to find a day where it's not going to be 95 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's just miserable to work in. And if we have some options, I'd rather do the cooler days. All right, so let's head over to the beds. I'll show you the two hoes that I'm going to use. And then while I'm working, not the whole time, but I do want to chat with you guys, ask you a few questions and get your opinions on some things. Okay, before we get started, I just want to show you some of the weeds that we'll be dealing with today. That is a sunflower that was direct seeded here. It's one of the only ones that came up. This is a native pea, which is not edible, and it spreads by runners. This is one of our many thistles. That is very small. It'll come up easily. So you can see we've got a lot of stuff popping up in here. That's a sunflower that actually survived from the direct sowing. These I can't seem to find a name for, but they are a weed. And a weed is just something you don't want in your bed. So it probably has some kind of use. If maybe it's a native herb, I don't know. But I couldn't find an identifier for it. So all of those need to come out. You can see there's a lot of them in here. And then the one that really just takes over everywhere, this is right here. This is called Kixia. It is a non-native, in my case, weed. That just spreads. You can see it's got those big long runners, and it just spreads like wildfire. It gets huge, takes over beds. It's pretty easy to pull up, real short root, which is good. So those I will actually hand pull because I want to get the whole root and not just chop them off with the hoe. And then we have big thistles like this, which you can't touch even with gloved hands. They are extremely spiky. Those have a deep taproot, but I can usually get them up a bit at least with the hoe. See, like here's another one right here. I mean, they're painful. They're a nightmare. And then we have more of these are like, they look like dandelions, the flowers do, but it's just another thistle. However, not nearly as thick a stalk, so they're much easier to attack with a hoe. So while I'm weeding these 2 rows, I want to get your opinion on some things. First, let's talk hoes. So I have 3 here actually. This one is my stirrup hoe. It's really old. I have to wear gloves because I need to sand down the handle. It's very splintery. But you can see it has this loop here. It's super strong. And you scuff through the soil and back and forth, and it gets up the weeds. This is really great for like thicker, harder to manipulate weeds. I have no luck with it on grass. None of these hoes work for me with grasses. They just lay down. And again, like I said, some of the really big thistles, can't really touch them because the stems are so thick. But it's good for the beds and sometimes the pathways. And then this is a collinear hoe. You can see the edge on that. I keep it nice and sharp. Actually, I need to sharpen it with a file before I start using it today. But this one is designed by Elliot Coleman. And the idea is that you can hoe, the angle of the hoe is such that you can stand upright. And so it's really nice for your back. It's very effective. It pulls things up easily, and even when it's dull. And you don't have to bend over, and you're not pushing and pulling. It's just pulling towards you. So if you have a lot of light weeds, you can get through a bed in a matter of minutes. So this one's great. And then another one of my favorites. This is a Japanese hand hoe. I got this from the Gardener's Workshop. It's very dirty, got caked on mud and all that kind of stuff. But I also keep a sharp edge on this one. This hoe is so strong and so powerful, even on a short stem like this. I can get really tough weeds out of the ground with this. Now, you're down on your hands and knees, but sometimes I kind of like weeding that way. I can just put on a book, and if I have really tough weeds in the beds, I can just sit and use this, and it's great. This even helps with big clumps of grass, because it can get with this pointed end, I can get underneath that clump of grass and pull really hard, and the whole thing will come up. So this is a really effective hoe as well. So I think I'm going to get started with the collinear hoe in this one row, because I think I can get most of what I need done with that thing. So I mentioned that I wanted your advice on a few things. If you've been here for a little while, you'll know that the biggest issue on this farm is rodents. Gophers and field mice, but gophers in particular. I have traps set out everywhere, good gopher traps that I got used to using when the soil was nice and soft during our rainy season, and I got good at it. I was able to get rid of the gophers in general in specific areas with that thing, so it was great. Since the ground has gotten hard and the field mice have taken over, the snap traps I'm using for them, it's just not working. It's not effective anymore. Before we left the Fish Ranch property, I was deeply considering going to our county, and in fact, I talked to them about it. Our county has a feral working cat program where you can adopt these cats that are not adoptable for like somebody's home. You know what I mean? They're kind of wild, or they're just not very friendly. But the idea is that they're working cats, like a barn cat or whatever. And people get them for their farms all over here to, help manage the horrible rodent population. We ended up moving from that property and moving here. And so I didn't get the cats. And now we're renting here. and I'm considering it again, I have a lot of things in my head that say it's not a good idea. And here's what I'm thinking. So, number one, I love cats. I have a kitty at home. Her name is Raven. You may have seen her on my Instagram, or even sometimes if I'm filming inside, she'll come up into a video. I have grown up with cats my entire life. They were outdoor cats when I was very little. And then we switched to having our cats only indoors because they kept getting hit by cars or killed by, predators, and it was breaking our hearts. It was hard to lose our pets. And so ever since I was probably in high school, we've always had our cats indoors. And I've been that way as an adult. My kitties have always been indoor cats. And they live long. My last two cats lived to be 19 and 20, respectively. And I attribute that to some of it's luck and good health, but also, not being hit by cars or killed by coyotes. And that has a lot to do with it. So I know that these cats, this program, don't want to be inside. They don't want to be in somebody's home. They're not like family pets. But if I got cats out here, I would become attached, even if they always hissed at me. And the thing is with these programs, they tell you still have to feed them. You can't let them rely completely on the rodent population because that will wax and wane. They still need to eat, which is fine. I have no problem feeding them. But I feel like I don't know if I have a safe place to provide for them out here. Most of these cats, or if they're getting adopted for farm work and stuff, they have at least a barn to live in. Here, I've got nothing. I've got the shed, but it's outside of the growing field. I could potentially build something, but this is not my property. We are leasing here. And so the idea of investing in a lot of infrastructure, spending money that way instead of reinvesting in growing things that I can make money from, I don't know. It's a tough call. And the other thing is, what happens at some point in the future when we leave here? I am of a firm believer that if you make a commitment to an animal, to care for that animal, then you care for that animal for the rest of their lives. You don't leave them behind. And so we would definitely have to be able to bring them with us wherever we went. And considering they're not going to be indoor cats or even wanting to be indoors, that could potentially really be challenging. If we move to a place where we don't right away have property, what's that going to mean for the cats? So I have all these things swirling in my head. On top of that, where we are located here is on a very busy road. It's not busy in terms of high amounts of traffic, but because it's a country road and it's a destination road, people either need to be on this end or on that end. They go fast, and animals don't survive on this road. Turkeys get hit, deer get hit. So that makes me nervous. And we have lots of predators here. Coyotes, bobcats, mountain lions, foxes. I don't know if the foxes would necessarily be a major predator to a cat, but if they don't have a safe place to go and escape that predator, which at this point they don't, not on this property right now, it just doesn't feel right. And it makes me sad because, number one, I'd love to have cats out here. They are very effective at rodent control, and yeah, I would just love it. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? My gut tells me it's not the right time, even though, it would help me so much to have mousers out here because they would do so much good work for me. But it also just doesn't feel right for the cats. See, look at the taproot on that guy. This ground is super soft right now because it's been irrigated, but this is tiny. This is a tiny plant, and look how long the taproot is already. See, this is where this hand hoe really comes in handy because these are little oak saplings and they're actually really hard to get up with a regular hoe, stand-up hoe. Plus, getting in here in amongst all the plants is just easier to do it with a handheld hoe. You might be wondering, why on earth am I weeding at the end of the season in between these rows of flowers that are going to come out? And there's two reasons. One, I don't want any of these weeds to go to seed without me noticing. That will just make the problem worse next year. Two, when I cut down and get ready to flip my beds, I don't pull the plants out. I cut them off at the roots so that the root systems stay in the ground. That creates, as they decompose, wonderful channels for air, water, and soil life to move around. So they'll get a topping of compost on top, but underneath the soil will be much more open and full of air, and water can percolate through much easier. So I like to leave those in the ground. So it's not like I'm going to come through here and till to get rid of the weeds and the plants. That's not going to be the method. So that's why I'm doing this hand weeding now. In general, most of the places that I've had big stands of growth, there's not that many weeds because the plants themselves shade out the weeds and they can't really take a hold. But these strawflower have been here since last October. And so, they've got some weeds. Not very many, but they do. So I want to get these out, especially because some of these weeds are not even, like I said, they are oak saplings from this big oak tree over here. The roots are deep underground and it just sends up runners and sends up little saplings off the roots. And so I definitely don't want those to take hold. All right, I'm gonna get back to work. Okay, well, it's a start. So we got this bed, and this bed weeded, which is good. Look at all the gopher damage here. I'm not worried right now. I mean, I can set traps, but I have had no success. I think I will today before I leave, set a trap here or two. But there's nothing growing in this bed right now. However, I don't want them to get established, because then when we plant for spring in 2 months, it's going to be a problem. So I will set a trap there. But I did start coming through and pulling back weeds from the edge here. This ground is rock hard because it is the end of our dry season, but we still probably have 2 months left. And it's not irrigated like this, which is nice and soft. So this area here with the weeds, I tried the stirrup hoe, the collinear hoe, the hand hoe. That's not working. None of that is working. So what ends up happening is I will probably come through with, not right now, but before when we go to remake these beds, I'll probably till the edges of these beds, and then put a thick layer of wood chips down on those edges, because the tilling will break up the soil, kill the weeds, bring up any new weed seeds, and then we'll have a layer of cardboard and wood chips on that edge, and that will prevent anything from germinating. So I think that's the plan for that. Still clearly need to weed this bed, the pollinator patch bed. There's a lot of thistles starting to come up in there, so I've got to go in there and get that done, but that's not going to happen today. I mean, it's still, even though it's falling apart, it's still okay, and there's still things blooming. All of this will get cut back, and it'll just come back in the spring. But we do have some rodent burrows there, right? So everything's so established in here, and most of these perennials have really deep roots, and so I'm not too worried, but I will set a few traps once I weed. Okay, so I'm also going to do the same treatment I was just talking about on the side of the pathway here. When we go to flip this bed had Bachelor Brett and the Bride and Scabiosa, which you can see, and most of it is bloomed out. And it also had a huge amount of gopher activity recently, and I set traps and nothing happened. So maybe it was my fault for the way I set them. Maybe they're digging much deeper right now. I don't know. But I'm gonna have to reset and hope I catch some. I mean, here's a hole right here. That's probably not a gopher hole, because gopher holes usually are buried by their backfill. Okay, all this weeding, again, it's gonna have to get tilled out. I did pull away from the edge of this dahlia bed. I actually had to use a shovel to dig out these thistles because they are so deeply rooted. But again, just making notes for more stuff that's got to get done. But this bed is a mess. I'm not ready to flip it yet. I'm not harvesting on it anymore, but I'm not going to flip it. I'm just going to let these plants stay and feed the soil until we're ready to transplant for spring. We'll flip the beds. But look, all this stuff here. So I'll do the same treatment here. I will till the edges here, put cardboard down, and a thick layer of wood chips to protect the edges of these beds. So basically they're just going to get, the rows will be wood chipped like they are here, and it'll create a box around them. That will be super effective because these wood chips have been really effective. Even in places like here where I put a layer of wood chips down and then rodents dug them up and stuff, I've had no weed growth in here. So it's been really, really good. And you can contrast that with here where I did not put wood chips down. That is all weeds, right? So again, this side will get a till, cardboard, wood chips, and I think that will help us tremendously next year. I don't really care if weeds grow up along the edge here, along the fence. I could care less. This is not growing space. I just don't want them within the foot or so of the edge of the beds. Making more mental notes for more work that I need to do out here. Probably just bring Dylan out. There's more hand weeding of the, I think it's called Kixia again. Dahlias are blooming. I'm just not getting very many. So not enough to do, I'm getting some to put in bouquets for the CSA, but there's definitely not enough for consignment, to harvest and sell. But that's okay. I mean, look at this stuff, how it spreads. Thankfully, it's very easy to pull up. This, however, is not. That's deep taproot. I got to dig that out with a shovel. So yeah, all this weeding this coming week, and all through here, and see, they've all gone to seed. So this seed blows onto the growing beds and comes back next year. So that's why I want to try to knock things down before they get to that point. But what I really wanted to come out here and check is the mums. Now look how big they've gotten. This is exciting. We did lose quite a few plants to rodents, but the ones that survived are looking pretty good, and they got blooms on them. So I think in the next month or so, God, I can barely even walk through here with this stuff. These are the ones I'm saying I need to use the hedge trimmer to cut down. And then look, that just came up right through the hole of the irrigation, of the fabric. More gopher activity. So these mums, they're looking great. So I will still get harvestable stems, not just for the CSA, but for wholesale, which I'm like, thank goodness, because pretty much nothing left on the farm right now. Look at that. That is a sunflower, Steve sunflower. It's gorgeous. I'm going to let it be where it fell because it fell in between plants. So, yeah, I mean, I'm bummed out that this was the only bed of sunflowers I had all year. I started multiple successions and planted multiple successions, and they all got destroyed before they even had a chance to take off. So I have to come up with a new plan for next year, and we'll make it happen. But these yellow mums are starting to bloom, so that's good. I can start working on those, but you can see the predation here. Right? These ones obviously won't be giving me anything, but I still have enough. It's not a lot, but it's enough. All right, and then of course more weeding here. Look at that mountain mint. You know, nobody bought it when I cut it for consignment, and I saw it yesterday in a grocery store, and I asked them if anybody buys it, and they said not usually. It's such a bummer because it's so beautiful, but I think maybe it's because of the sap. So I probably just won't grow it anymore. I mean, it's a perennial. Probably what I'll do, guys, because this bed is not going to be used again, I will just leave this here, and we'll see what happens with it. Maybe I'll have luck again at some point trying to sell it. But whatever. So yeah, lots of weeds in here. Not worried. These beds are not lined. As I said before, the original plan was to build 3 more of those. But now we're just going to build some really big ones. And so that's the other thing I want to get your opinion on. But first, this is going to be our tulip bed coming up here soon. And, you know, it desperately needs more soil. You can see how much soil has been pulled through. Now, it is protected with hardware cloth stapled to the bottom. So rodents can't get in here. These holes are just from... they've been digging underneath, and then the soil falls through. But all these lilies will come out. We will place all of the, I'll level the soil first, and then we'll place all of the tulips bulbs really close together, like I always do. They're going to look like eggs in a carton. First, I'll put some bulb food down since this soil has already been used. Then we'll cover them up with a whole layer of compost up almost to the top of the bed, and cover it with hardware cloth as well, temporarily, and they'll stay like that all winter. And then when they finally start coming up, I will remove the hardware cloth on the top, but that will keep them protected from everything. In the future, if I need to do more beds like this is 4x6, I can put them here because there's already irrigation set up. But the main goal now is to build some really big beds. We have a whole lot of leftover lumber, and I am going to use what we've got. Instead of putting up a little kind of greenhouse that was basically just going to be a staging area, we're going to build some protected raised beds. So I already have all the materials we need. One of them is going to be 4x8, and we have enough lumber to build probably 2, maybe 3 more of those. So my question is to you guys, help us decide where we're going to put them. So I am standing above the dahlia bed right here. And when I say above, it's because I'm on a hill. This section right here, when we pull the tarp back, so number one, this has been tarped for months. And so there's nothing but bare dirt under here, which is awesome. We can come through with a tiller to actually flatten it out a little bit more. But we could build a bed or two all along here next to the dahlia bed, obviously with a pathway, a nice wide pathway because we have plenty of space. But it is on a slope, or what we're thinking of is this area here, because it is relatively flat. There's a bit of a dip here, but that's not a problem. It's, you know, it's mostly flat. We could fit 2 4x8 beds here next to each other. The only caveat is there's this big oak tree here. It's beautiful. And the landowners do not mind if we cut back branches. So we could take a few branches back to open this area up completely. But that will mean a little bit less sun on these beds than, say the open field. But so far out here, I haven't really noticed that being an issue. We've got this big giant hill over here. So the sun, even in the summertime, sets here on the property at like 5 o'clock. And then in the morning it comes up from over here, and these trees will shade certain areas of the property, but everything pretty much has grown fine that survived the gophers, has grown fine with the sun, except for this area over here. These Tweedia on this edge of the bed here really were a lot shorter. I mean, it's hard to tell. They didn't do as well as the ones out of the drip line of this oak. Now that could be, it could be sun, or more likely, it's the allelopathic tendencies of oaks, meaning where their drip line is, as far out as their drip line is where their roots go. In general, with trees, the edge of the drip line of the leaves is where the edge of the roots are. There are exceptions, but that's the general rule. And plants that are allelopathic, like oaks, basically prohibit most things from growing under them all the way out to that drip line. It's a chemical that they secrete that keeps things from growing. And so that's why people who try to plant things around their oak trees really, really struggle. Part of it's the shade, but a lot of it is the allelopathic nature of the oaks. So it could be that affects that part of the bed. But again, I'm not too worried. This was our first year out here. We started, literally, this was an empty lot a year ago. And so, we're trial and error, and we're finding things that work and things that don't. Rest of these beds, there's not a whole lot left to harvest. The yellow Lisianthus, they sure are beautiful though. And the pink ones are completely done. I'm gonna try to grab a few stems for drying, but I think I've kind of surpassed my window for most of it. And you can see the flower support netting fell over because I didn't remember to put extra stakes. But this is the importance of this. If this netting wasn't here, they'd be flat on the ground. They just get heavy, and like this. They get heavy and they fall over, or the wind knocks them over, or you have a big storm come through and just flattens everything. So this flower support netting is really important. Yes, it's plastic, and I don't really like using plastic, but I reuse these. This is probably the 3rd season of this particular netting. I just roll them up and roll them back out. All right, I'm gonna clean up out here, guys. We have chores at home to do, and I feel like I've been talking your ear off as it is. So, mental notes. This is basically like the garden walk with notes the other day. I've done it for the farm. We'll come out here with the kids over the next couple weekends and try to make some major progress. Because once the rains come, then in addition to all these regular weeds, the grass explodes. And it's gorgeous because it's nice and green, but it becomes so thick out here and you have to repeatedly. In fact, I think this year, now that I know what's on the ground, last year I was tempted to bring the mower out here, even though we have a bit of a hillside. But I was like, but I don't know what's under all this grass. I don't know if there's rocks and big stumps and stuff like that. Now that I've been walking around on it for a whole season, I know what's under the grass, and there's no danger in bringing the mower out. That would make quick work of just knocking things back. And the weeds will keep coming back. That's just the nature of weeds. As long as they stay out of my growing beds, I don't really care so much if they're on the rest of the property, as long as I keep them from going to seed. Okay, we're back in the home garden. I'm gonna sow another succession of carrots here. The ones under the board have not yet germinated, but that's all right. And you can see just right under the surface how dry this soil is, even though I just wet it down. So note to self, I need to do some more firm watering here. So this is an example of how soil can get hydrophobic and the surface can look nice and wet for you, but like half an inch below is dry, dry, dry. So always make sure you check. I can see that this is soaking in well. I don't have another board to put on this, or maybe I do. I gotta go look for this round to see if it'll germinate. But you know, it's only been a week since the last one, and so sometimes carrots take a while to germinate. So you'll just have to be patient. And Mike and I are going away this weekend. The kids are going to stay here together, and I'm giving them watering chores to make sure these stay nice and hydrated while they germinate. Because even though these oyas are full, they don't deliver water to the surface. They deliver water, you know, below the surface. So underneath, there's lots and lots of moisture, but on top, where the seeds are waiting to germinate, they need a lot of moisture. Okay, and I'm also going to plant another 2 rows of beets. Actually, this one is just starting to germinate and pop up above the soil, so that's awesome. Another row of golden beets, because those really are my favorite. I have been very, very careful with these and planting them a good distance apart from each other, so that, unlike the carrots, that I don't care how close they are, because these are compound seeds, and you know, I want to make sure that the beets have enough space to grow and bulb up for me. All right, that's the golden beets. I'm going to do this row of the... Oh, see, now this row needs more water. And this is all fresh soil that we just put in last week. Bagged soil. It's a raised bed potting mix. And once these guys get going, we'll give them some fertilizer, because I would like to have some kind of harvest between now and our first frost, which is usually in November. And these beets are all, let's see, this one is 48 days, and the golden ones are, doesn't say. So probably about the same. And so since we're going into fall, I'm going to add maybe 10 days on top of that. So we're looking at maybe 60 days till harvest on those. All right, I'm gonna water those in, and then we'll move on to the peas. So we did sow some peas here in this pea trellis, which was for spring, and now it's got some beans in it, last week. They have not germinated yet. I am going to now place some peas in a new area with another trellis that I'm hoping will get, so this one will also be in ground, but I'm hoping one of these two will germinate and we'll get some peas for the fall. This is the area we are going to clear. Now, it's kind of sad because you can see fresh new growth coming off of this big giant. This was a pumpkin vine that we did get a few squash off of, and it looks beautiful right now, but you know what? It's got to come out. We've got lots of other squashes still, including that dude that keeps getting eaten, but it's not ready to be harvested yet. So I'm going to pull these plants up. Actually, I'm going to cut them off at the base, and I'm going to toss them to the chickens because they actually, these leaves are actually really healthy for them. And then I'll kind of roughen up this area and put a little bit of starter fertilizer down. We will water it in, and then I'll place the trellis and we'll plant some seeds. Okay, well, that's it pretty much for my chores for today, farm and garden chores. I do have to go start a 6-pack of purple sprouting broccoli, but that's the only other seed on my list this week to do. So we had carrots, beets, and peas, and I can see all these crazy wasps going around the water. They're very thirsty anytime there's water. I've left pans out for them, but they don't seem to do that, I think, because it's dangerous. They could drown, so they just try to get the water from the soil. But yeah, so hopefully these peas will germinate and we'll get a fall crop of peas. And, the things are still producing in the garden, which is lovely. All the shiso over there, that's going to come out, I don't know, over the next couple of weeks as I start adding new seedlings to the garden, and I'll just give it to the chickens. They love it. It was not a hit with my family. This is the first time growing it. I actually liked it, but the kids and Mike all said that it tasted dry. And it's got an interesting texture. But yeah, I like it. Anyway, while it's still here, I'll keep putting it on my salads, but I don't know that I'll grow it again. We're just going to keep experimenting with all of the wonderful Asian greens that are out there because they do well in this garden. Things tend not to bother them, and they're really, really healthy for you. So I'll just keep trying. My kids actually really do enjoy greens of all sorts. And so for them to say they didn't like shiso, I was like, okay, well, there's lots of other options because they've been really good about greens. They enjoy them. In fact, when Dylan was, I don't know, 9, 10 months old, maybe, he tried seaweed salad from a Japanese restaurant for the first time, and he loved it and just couldn't get enough. Probably because it's pretty sweet. But ever since then, these are kids who enjoy their greens and their vegetables. So, yeah, if they say they don't like a specific thing, I'm cool with that. We're just going to grow what we want to eat. That's why we don't grow eggplant, because none of us really like eggplant. So I know maybe that's a crime, but I figure don't waste space on things that you're not actually going to enjoy eating, unless you want the challenge of learning how to grow it. So, all right, the girls are chatting back there. They say hello and goodbye. Thanks for hanging out with me today, you guys, while we did some chores. I hope you have a wonderful time in your garden. I probably will only post a couple of shorts this weekend because Mike and I are going away, and the whole goal is to unplug. So I'll see you guys back on Monday. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.